time we gather together in this house of worship. We ask your blessings on us, bless the ones that are not with us today. We ask you to guide our minds and our hearts and our thoughts. And what we say in this lesson is importance of Christian, the idea of education in spirit and in religion. We ask you the blessings of each of our minds and thoughts today. So, worship and education. Memory text, 1 Chronicles 16:29. Give to the Lord the glory due his name, bring an offering, come before him. Oh, worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. Found in 1 Chronicles. Now the story is regards to when they brought the ark to the temple. David here is speaking. Oh, worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. And just that verse alone, what is it telling you? What does it imply? Oh, worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. What is holiness? Can holiness be anywhere? Does it have to be in a manner that is sacred? Does worship have to happen in a holy atmosphere? Does that mean you have to stop and get to a place that is holy? Worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. In some regards, you wonder, is it proper? Are some worshiping events proper because it's not in the beauty of holiness? But then the classic question, who gets to judge what is holy? That's where the question lies. It's what determines what is holy? Does that mean as long as you feel it's proper? But what you feel might not be the same idea that I have, so who's right or who's wrong? So the classic debate goes on. Who determines what is holy? And a lot of people will say, well, the Spirit of prophecy says, well, just one person's opinion will override everybody else's. So there's the question we're going to lean on. What is the proper worship in education? Worship is part of humanity, part of human nature, even fallen human nature. No question, we were created as beings who, out of the free gift given us by God, would worship the Lord because we love Him and know that He is worthy of worship. So, there's the idea, the setting for this lesson, the idea that we were all made, we are all created beings, and out of freedom that was given to us by God, we would worship the Lord because we love Him and know that He is worthy of worship. Because we are created beings. Let's open up with Sunday's lesson. We all worship something. That's a pretty common thought. It's something you don't really recognize. But by some means, every public world, public events, something is worship. Because worship is something to devote your time. So if something devotes your time other than religion, then you're worshiping something other than religion. Something that devotes your time, takes up your time. And you think, well, I don't do anything other than work. Well, then maybe work is a form of your worship. Well, I don't do anything. When I get home from work, I just sit in front of a TV. I don't do anything else. Well, there again, something devotes your time. So in that respect, anything that devotes your time is in the form of worship. And sometimes people consider the fact, well, I'm not kneeling in front of it, I'm not praying to it, so then it realistically is a worship. No. The aspect is if it takes up your time, it has control of it. And so therefore, you allow that object, that person, that event, whatever, to take up your time, and therefore it's a form of worship. So we get into Daniel chapter 3. We're not going to read through it all. But is there anything in there that is very outstanding, or that's something in those verses that really brings to light the idea of worship? Is there anything in those verses that you really brings something to you? And that's something that you can definitely say, now there is a true form of worship. If we get to the sort of this first part, get to the middle of the chapter 3. Now if you, in chapter 15, verse 15, now if you are ready at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery, in symphony with all kinds of music, and you fall down and worship the image which I have made, good. But if you do not worship, you shall be cast immediately into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you from my hands? Was this a true form of worship? Was Nebuchadnezzar asking them to worship? It's a classic question. Did he ask them to worship? He asked them to bow down. He asked them to make recognition of when you hear the music, you are to fall down and worship the image which I have made. And that is good. But if you don't, then that is bad. What was the 3 Hebrews remark? If it is this day that we do not bow down, and if we shall die because of it, then it is the Lord's will. Now a lot of people have always, this is a very common question, a common thought. Why does it hurt to kneel? Even if you have no devotion to worship the item, why does it hurt to kneel? What are you giving up by doing that? You have no intentions to pray to the idol. Where's the problem in that? Is there a problem in that?
Are you still devoting your time? You're not truly devoting it.
You can't go anywhere else at that time.
Anywhere else. You're being forced to do it. You're giving into that.
Well, okay, so you're being forced.
Yeah, because if you didn't, what would happen? There's consequences.
There's consequences. Right? Are there consequences for not worshiping the true God? There's still consequences in that. There's consequences no matter what.
But if you choose to worship the true God, there's a reward for it, right?
Okay?
Is there a reward for doing counterfeit?
Where's the line of being counterfeit? Where do you draw the line? Okay. Where is the line drawn in determining this is counterfeit beyond this line? Who draws up that line? Let me ask this. How many of you go to another church, have gone to another church other than this one, or if some of you might not even be of this church, yet you might be here, but yet if you go to another church that does not worship in the same manner that you do, just because you might go there with a family member, are you counterfeit now? You're attending another church that does not conform to what you believe. Are you compromising? I know some individuals who are married, one of one faith, one of another, but yet out of respect for each other, they go to each other's church. They're firm believers in one church, but yet out of respect, which is totally understandable.
If we don't know the whole truth, and we're keeping the truth we have, we're not counterfeit.
Okay, so if
I don't know, if I'm going to this church and I don't know about the Sabbath because I haven't been convicted of it yet, then the truth that I have, and that I stick to that truth and worship God the way I know, I'm not counterfeit.
okay, so let's put it in perspective. If you know a God, if you know the truth and you practice it and you attend church and you practice it, but yet you go to another church, you know the truth. You're not practicing it in the other church, in another church. But as long as you know the truth, you're all right.
You
In
know
practicing.
what the truth that you have, because you
That
don't
you-
know the whole truth. And even if you go to the other church as a obligation to your spouse, the Protestant churches look so much the same, and they're preaching so much of the same, unless he's a Jew and you're a Protestant, there's not that much difference.
There's not much difference. No? Truly, there isn't. Maybe just the day of the week, but there's not much difference. Oh, there's sometimes it's day to death, whatever. But yet, you can get a great sermon on Christ from any church.
Right.
Okay? Sometimes the formalities, certain parts of the worship service you might not agree with.
Well, I might not agree with it because I haven't been convicted of it yet.
Because why?
I haven't been convicted of
You haven't been convicted? Well, some individuals are convicted and they know the truth and yet, but they feel comfortable going to the other church. They're not practicing their religion, but out of respect they're attending.
Well, but that, there's sheep in other folds, and there's
Definitely.
no reason to ostracize another faith just because they don't have the whole truth.
Definitely. But as long as you have the truth, you're not compromising anything. As long as you understand the truth and know the truth, you're not compromising whatever church you go to, whatever temple.
As long as I have the truth that God has given me. Because unless you go to a church, say the Seventh-day Adventist church, where they have more of the truth, then as long as God's not going to say, okay, well, you didn't know this, but I'm going to judge you on it anyway.
Good. Good. Understand?
So basically, it's what your purpose is.
What your purpose is. Okay? So as long as you don't have a purpose, attending another church or temple, sanctuary, as long as there's no purpose, you're just busy. All right. You're not compromising anything.
Well, is your purpose
by attending another church, not of your own faith, the best thing you can do is to go there and to take part. But if you go there and you say, hey, what you guys are doing is wrong, you're not going to win anyway, right? Okay, so those three Hebrews, they could have gone there and attended this function and just taken part, rather than standing up and saying, hey, everybody here is wrong. Isn't that the same idea? So if we go to another church, we go there in a manner not to create diversity, but to fellowship and to win people over in a manner, but yet we don't go there to say, hey, everything you're doing wrong. I'm not going to take part in that because it's wrong. So why not let the three Hebrews kneel? Because they stood up there and they pretty much just made the statement, hey, everybody here, you're wrong. We're not going to conform to this. We're doing it our way. This is totally wrong. You're all wrong. You wouldn't go to another church and do that, would you?
They didn't say that.
But they're already, see, those people already have their evidence of the law. And
Well,
I'm thinking of the fact that Nebuchadnezzar and the other people in the that knew of Daniel's dream, that knew they already knew.
Okay. I would say very few people do. This whole plain, this whole flat countryside was filled with people.
I was trying to think of a comparison of going to a church today that worships Christ. They may not be worshiping all the whole truths that we might have, but Daniel in Hebrews, they knew the true God. What percentage of the people there knew of God? You know, were they more in civilization that was more of idol worship? Something about their upbringing was. If I went to another church and worshiping God, I would see another idol there. So I look at it as a little bit different basis. It's hard to compare these two factors in that one.
Okay. So you're saying it's all right to stand up in that real heathens
No,
and to make a point.
no. I'm just saying that it's one thing to really worship an idol.
Okay.
Then, someone that's trying to worship God, they may not be their home. Maybe they haven't exposed to it yet. When the angel then stood up, they really put their foot on me. This is part of the Ten Commandments,
They were loyal to God. They wanted to shoulder They did not want to break that.
They didn't want to break that commandment. Okay. So what you're pretty much implying that you're not going to compromise their faith. Okay. Try not to compromise faith. That in itself is a classic struggle. Because a lot of things come to us on a daily basis that tries to compromise what we believe. And of course the three Hebrews, this was a life-threatening compromise. They probably had seen many compromising situations that was probably not even recorded in the Bible in Daniel in regards to the life that they were dealing with. But this being the life-threatening compromise, they said, no, this is no different than anything else. This is still the same. We don't adhere to it. We don't agree with it. So in regards to my whole scenario here, sometimes there are times where we got to stand up and say, no, this isn't a part of what I believe. And how we do it they come out and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this manner. If that is the case, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the God of the golden image which you have set up. In the manner that they responded, they said, whatever shall happen will happen. Guaranteed. Whether we live or die. But one thing about it, Nebuchadnezzar, we're not going to worship your idols. Whether or not we live from this point on, or whether or not we die, that's not up to us but God. But we're not going to worship your idols. Now, they could have been a lot more condemning. They could have told Nebuchadnezzar, oh, you are the most worthless heathen. Oh, God is going to take care of you. Because we're right, and you are wrong. And you're going to see that. Because God is going to take care of you. They didn't say that. They said, our life is in God's hands. That's all we're worried about. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Sometimes it's how we respond to other people about our beliefs. It needs to be something we need to be critical about. How do we respond in a situation like this? Now, there are times when we can try and be secret about it. And in the scenario that a lot of people would question, what happens if they would have just kneeled down on one knee and prayed to God? That's the most common perception that everybody has had. What if? But God doesn't ask us to put a lot of what ifs into our religion. God says, put your faith and trust in me. I will take care of it. And that's what the Hebrews were depending on.
Because we need to have a relationship with God so we can make a decision that we're not going to make that decision. We need to have a daily relationship with God now so that when we get to that point, we can make a decision eternally be comfortable.
Okay,
That was the plan where the Hebrews were. But you also have the story of, God takes us where we are because He moves us.
okay.
So I think it's more important to have a relationship with God that we can make a mistake and that we know why we're right and
Okay. And Monday's lesson, and declare them to their children. Psalms 78. Psalm 78, 1 through 17. Reading a few of the verses, Psalm 78, verse 1. Give ear, O my people, to my law. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children, telling to the generation to come the praises of the Lord and His strength and His wonderful works that He has done. For He established the testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which He commanded our fathers, that they should make them known to their children, that the generation to come might know them. The children who would be born, that they may arise and declare them to their children, that they may set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep His commandments, and may not be like their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation that did not set its heart aright, and whose spirit was not faithful to God. The children of Ephraim, being armed and carrying bows, turned back in the day of battle. They did not keep the covenant of God. They refused to walk in His laws, and forgot His works and His wonders that He had shown them. Marvelous things He did in the sight of their fathers in the land of Egypt, in the field of Zon. He divided the sea. And so what we get here is Psalms, a song, actually written by a compilation of Asaph. Asaph was underlying message. What is the importance? First few verses talks about it pretty heavily. Verse 4, we will not hide them from their children, telling to the generation to come the praises of the Lord and to strengthen his wonderful works that he has done. For he established the testimony of Jacob and appointed law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers, that they should make them known to their children, that the generation to come might know them, the children who would be born, that they may arise and declare them to their children. What is the importance here? Where do you see a family setting here? Family setting of teaching them, teaching what God has done for you to your children. And that's what it says here. Give ear, O people, O my people, to my law, and incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. Dark sayings of old, the secrets of old, the historical events of old, the things that have been passed down from generation to generation that have suddenly stopped the progress because they have seemed to have lost their sight on the Lord. Now all those, not necessarily secrets, but the great praises of old have stopped because they have lost their sight on the Lord. Everything that was supposed to have been given to the children about regards to how well God has taken care of them in the past, the people, the fathers, the generations previous, it seems to have come to a halt. It seems to have been disregarded. It says, verse 8, and may not be like their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation that did not set its heart aright, and whose spirit was not faithful to God. It seems as how a rebellious generation has interrupted what God had established. Let your children know about the praises God has done for you. Let your children learn from your lifestyle, your devotion. Let your children learn from that, not only by watching you, but by listening to you. The idea of worship and education. Let the children know what has happened in the past. In Tuesday's lesson, in spirit and in truth, John chapter 4, 7 through 26. John 4, 7 through 26. Jesus coming to the well, to Jacob's well. And it says, a woman of Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, give me a drink. For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. Then the woman of Samaria said to him, how is it that you, being a Jew, ask a drink from me, a Samaritan woman? For the Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. Jesus answered and said to her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is who who says to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. And the woman said to him, sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where then do you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well, and drank from it himself, and as well as his sons and his livestock? So Jesus here coming to the well, all alone, sitting there waiting. The Samaritan woman comes out from the city to draw water. Jesus enters up a conversation with her. Now, this story has been broken up into at least 4 sections. One, the introduction and the way Jesus approaches this whole deal. Jesus enters in by general conversation. Can you give me something to drink? That is the first order of just opening up dialogue, social interaction. Opens it up for Jesus to get to the point of worship and religion. So, Jesus enters into the ask for a drink. She says, well, it's not quite conducive for you, being the righteous Jew, to ask me as a heathen Samaritan for a drink, because you Jews do not like to take anything from a heathen, because then you're unclean. Especially, it goes that we'll find that as we discuss further in our lesson, the whole idea of clean basins and jars and everything else like that. You do not accept anything from a Samaritan. So Jesus says, only if you knew truly the gift of God and what I can give you, you would not thirst any longer, because you would have the living water. And if you knew who I was, did she have any insight of what Jesus was talking about or who he possibly was? Jesus had not captured her attention yet, correct? He says living water. If you would only ask of me for this living water, you would be set for life. Her first thought was, seriously, there's better water than this well, and I know that. It's probably a spring water that you're talking about. The living water, something coming out of the ground, something traveling, something that's bubbling up out of the ground. Living water, a spring. She was assuming you can't get better than that. She was definitely thinking that would be great, and she's wondering, where did you find this spring that you're talking about? Verse 13, Jesus answered and said to her, whoever drinks of this water will thirst again, but whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him will never thirst. But the water that I shall give him will become in him a fountain of water springing up into everlasting life. The woman said to him, Sir, give me this water that I may not thirst nor come here to draw. Is she any closer to understanding what Jesus is talking about? She is still thinking about talking about literal natural water. She firmly believes that Jesus might have a secret or the possible known whereabouts of a spring where it is much more convenient for her to get the better water, that she don't have to walk all the way out of town to this well and to dip her base 100 foot down the ground and have to carry it all the way back to the home. Jesus said to her, Go, call your husband and come here. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said to her, You have well said, I have no husband. Was the woman correct in saying she has no husband? What was her regard in implying she has no husband? What was she trying to conceal? What was she trying to hide? In fact, she was an adulterer. She was not married, but yet with a man. She was hoping to end the conversation right here, right now. I have no husband. Enough said. Let's move on. Jesus says, right you are. You do not have a husband, but yet you have had 5. For you have had 5 husbands. And the one whom you now have is not your husband. In that you spoke truly. The woman said to him, Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. our fathers worshipped on this mountain, and you Jews say that in Jerusalem is the place where one ought to worship. Here she goes again. She's trying to cut the conversation short. She implies, okay, you obviously are some type of prophet. You are Jewish. And yet you as Jews say that we are wrong as Samaritans to worship here up on the mountain above the well. But yet you Jews believe we're wrong because we don't worship in Jerusalem. Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me that the hour is coming when you will neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We know what we worship, for salvation is of Jews. But the hour is coming, and now is when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such to worship Him. God is spirit, and those who worship Him must worship in spirit and truth." What did Jesus reply? What was His reply to her? What's the whole idea in regards to what is the meaning of God is spirit and those who worship Him must worship in spirit and in truth? She was implying, her first idea was worship is in a literal spot. You say we are wrong to worship here. You Jews believe it is correct and only proper to worship in Jerusalem. What is she implying? What did Jesus imply back to her that was trying to make her truly understand the true form? Trying to educate her in the idea of worship. What was her idea of worship? Let's gain that understanding. What is her idea of worship? First of all, it's in a specific location. It has to be, she's implying, you Jews say it specifically has to happen at Jerusalem. You say we are wrong for worshiping up on top of the mountain above the well. Their temple was torn down in about the 2nd century BC by a priest, the head priest, Hercules, that was devout and devoted in trying to eradicate all heathen worship. And so from that point on, that temple was torn down on the mountain above Jacob's well. The Samaritans never did rebuild it, and so they didn't have the true temple to worship in. So then the idea of worship had sort of become abandoned. But yet the Jews says truly the only place to worship is in Jerusalem. What is her mentality of believing what worship is? Sometimes it's the same for us. Worship happens one day a week. Happens at church. You don't get to church that week if you didn't get any worship in. What is Jesus implying? God is spirit, and those who worship Him must worship in spirit and in truth. What's the whole idea of being God is spirit? Let me give you a scenario. I've been gone for the last couple months, and I meet all kinds of different people. And one individual come up to me, and we got to talk real quick. And I knew him. I got to know him in the previous month that I was down there in Colorado. And I don't know how we even got talking about it, but he just started rambling on. Super nice guy. He was from out of Idaho, and he was, I'm going to say, a logger profession, possibly. And so he got to talking about something. I don't remember how we got to the conversation, how we were just conversational. He just talking. I'm just listening, and we got talking about, I think the comment was, he says, I need proof of things. I really need to have proof before I really believe in something. He says, well, take for instance, he says, I got this lady at work. She just talks all the time about religion. She's a younger lady, and I like her, but she just talks about religion all the time. Just for the last 10 years, just talks about religion all the time. And I finally just told her, and I've told her several times, give me the proof, then I'll believe. Until that time, I'm not going to believe anything until I see the proof. And he looked at me and says, you go to church? Okay, where am I going to go with this? I says, yeah? He said, oh, okay. He said, nothing against anybody that goes to church, but I'm just at that point. Let me know, before I believe anything, you got to show me the proof in anything. And I'm thinking, okay, how do you respond? Before I even got anything out, the conversation had gone way past. Where is the proof in what Jesus said here? What is Jesus saying? God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. What is spirit? What is Jesus implying about God is spirit, and unless you worship in the correct way, you worship in spirit and in truth? What is it implying that God is spirit? Everybody here just for the 11 o'clock worship hour. Everybody here just to get in the daily dose of worship. What is spirit? You can't prove it, can you? Spirit is something that speaks to you personally. Correct? Like you said, unless you have a daily devotion with God, you can read the Bible, can sit on the shelf, the Bible can be on your pillow day and night, but yet that thing is not doing you any good, correct? Unless you have a daily devotion with God and understand Him, and He has a conviction in you, does that Bible convict you? Does the Bible convict anybody? Do the words convict you? Will the words save you? Not by itself. It will lead you to something. It will lead you to God because God's Spirit speaks to you. How do you prove that to someone? When that gentleman asked me, give me the proof and I'll believe. I could have taken the Bible, hit him across the head. Here's your proof. Is that going to help? Where is the proof in your worship? Your actions. This guy was a nice guy. He would have helped me. He would have done anything for me. Am I judging his actions there? What he's seeing in me. That's the proof he's looking for. I took it to be something more literal. Only a miracle could have happened. But Jesus scolded the individuals. Jesus scolded the Pharisees, scribes and Pharisees, when they came up and asked him for miracles. And Jesus told them, you hypocrites, you liars, you ask for miracles, but yet you still do not believe. Where is the proof? When it says God is spirit, and unless you worship in spirit and in truth, you are not worshiping. That's a truly philosophical question. What is spirit? The woman said to him, I know the Messiah is coming, who is called Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things. Jesus said to her, I who speak to you. God is spirit, and those must worship in spirit and in truth. God is spirit. Does anybody have any idea in their lives how that is relevant? God is spirit. Unless you worship in spirit and in truth, unless God has convicted you, you will not know the truth. Unless God has convicted you, you will not know the Spirit. And that's what Jesus is saying here. Forget what the Jews are saying about you have to worship over there. Forget your traditions of believing you as Samaritans have to worship up there. Unless you truly know God, unless God lives within you, you will not be able to worship Him. Wednesday's lesson. We don't have much time, so why don't we just go ahead and get to Thursday's lesson. Idolatry and education. Mark 7, 1 through 13. Mark 7, 1 through 13. Then the Pharisees and some of the scribes came together to him, having come from Jerusalem. Now when they saw some of his disciples eat bread with defiled, that is, with unwashed hands, they found fault. For the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they wash their hands in a special way, holding the tradition of the elders. When they come from the marketplace, they do not eat unless they wash. And there are many other things which they have received in full, like the washing of cups, pitchers, and copper vessels, and kettles. Then the Pharisees and scribes asked him, Why do your disciples not walk according to the tradition of the elders, but eat bread with unwashed hands? He answered and said to them, Well did Isaiah prophesy of you hypocrites, as it is written, This people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me, and in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. For laying aside the commandment of God, you hold the tradition of men, and washing of pitchers and cups, and many other such things you do. And he said to them, All too well, you reject the commandment of God, that you may keep your tradition. For Moses said, Honor your father and your mother. And he who curses the father or mother, let him be put to death. But you say, if a man says to his father or mother, Whatever profit you might have received from me is Corbin, that is, dedicated to the temple. And you no longer let him do anything for his father or his mother, making the word of God of no effect through your tradition which you have handed down, and many such things you do. Idolatry and education. The ideas here found in Mark chapter 7. What principles do we find in verses 7 through 9 that could apply today in the context of Christian education, the nature of false teaching taken from the world, that could negatively impact the practice of our faith? Teachings. We talked about compromises earlier. Compromises. We talked about the idea of whether or not we might attend another church randomly. We compromise faith. Education. We talked about Christian education. We talked about the compromises there. We talked about the three Hebrews in regards to their life-threatening situation at the front of the idol. Compromising. Who is allowed to set the standard of where the compromise starts and ends? Is it different for everybody? Is it the same for all of us? Am I to say, well, you're compromising your faith by doing that? How do you know when you start to compromise your faith? Where does it go back to understanding what compromising is? Where's the basis of understanding what compromising is, when compromising starts? How do we alleviate the possibility of compromising? We go back to what Jesus told the Samaritan woman. It's amazing that maybe this Samaritan woman, this heathen woman, out of anybody, was able to truly understand what Jesus was talking about, because if Jesus was to have told these Pharisees and Sadducees, these Pharisees and these scribes, truly, if you do not worship in spirit and in truth, you're not worshiping at all. Pharisees would have just right over the top. But the Samaritan woman, do you think she truly understood it? Did Jesus talk to her in a practical sense that she truly understood it? Unless you have the conviction in you, whatever education or whatever form of worship you're going to practice is will not be sufficient. It goes back to the very first verse of our lesson here. Give to the Lord the glory due His name, bring an offering, and come before Him. Oh, worship the Lord in beauty of holiness. And to summarize that, in beauty of holiness, does that mean once a week you get that opportunity in worshiping the Lord in beauty and holiness? Is it only once a week? Can it happen any other part of the day or any part of the week? If it can happen any other part of the week, then what do you consider to be the holiness in your worship? The holiness is being able to find God and to be able to have Him speak to you and be able to convict your life. Because if there is a conviction, there's nothing more holy about it.
And you need to ask the Holy Spirit daily to come into your life and help you to be more like Jesus.
Right? So every day is a chance for there to be a worship of the Lord in beauty and holiness. It doesn't have to happen in today's ceremony. That's what we're not talking about, is allowing you to have one chance to have a worship service in beauty and holiness. It's not about this worship service. And that's what Jesus was implying when He's talking to the Samaritan woman. Oh, forget the individuals that believe you have to worship in a certain way, in a certain manner, over here or over there or wherever. The beauty of worship and holiness can happen here right now, wherever you're at the well. It can happen anywhere, as long as there's a conviction of Christ. Let's end with prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the time we can open up your Word and come to an understanding of how we can better worship you. We ask that in our hearts and our minds that we open up the ability of you to work in us, to work in our lives, that we can come to you and lift you up in a holy manner, in a personal manner, that we come to you. And we ask for your leading and guidance in whatever we do. Thank you in your name.